This is part 4 of our coding inheritance example, and so at this point we have all of our classes coded with constructors and properties. So next we're going to come over to our program.cs file where our main resides, and we're going to look at how to create instances of each one of these objects. So the first thing I'm going to do is create some variables to hold the information I want to pass to my constructor. Here are the variables for two different employees. We have a John Smith and a phone number, and we can see he's a full-time employee since he has a salary and vacation days. And our second employee has a first name, last name, and phone number, and then we can see she's a part-time employee because she has an hourly rate. We create instances of derived classes using their constructors just like you learned in the previous lesson on creating classes with the object creation statement. So I can create a full-time object, and you can see that I need all 5 pieces of information in order to create a new full-time employee per the constructor that we created. So I'm going to pass in this information from the variables that I've defined. Same thing for the second employee, I can create a part-time object. And I have to pass in all of this information. Let's set a breakpoint and look at what really happens when these statements are called. So our breakpoint is set on the full-time object creation statement. When we step in, we can see we go into the full-time class to evaluate the constructor. This constructor then calls the base classes constructor using that base keyword that we implemented, passing the information of first name, last name, and phone over so those properties can then be set. Once the base classes constructor has been called, then the derived class constructor is called. And so we can see that those properties are being set. Now we have a new instance of a full-time object, and we can see that it contains all of the properties and can access all of the items from the employee class as well as the items from its derived class. Same thing for part-time. When we step in, we see that it goes to the part-time class constructor and then calls its base class constructor to set those 3 properties before coming over to the part-time class and setting its property. Before we wrap up this video, let's go into our derived classes and look at a new method. There are many built-in methods that are part of the .NET class type called object, in which all classes are derived classes. And so if we use the public override toString method, we can print out information about our class to the console window or a form application, or use it to write out information about the object. Now by default, the toString isn't very helpful, but if we override its implementation, we can specify our own. Here's an example of how to use the toString. You can see that even though I'm in my full-time class, I have access to the first name and last name properties of my base class, and I've written is full-time. In the part-time class, I've done the same thing using the override toString method to return the statement the first name, last name is part-time. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how to use this overridden toString method to take the ideas of inheritance and add in polymorphism, which was a concept we previously talked about.